Hey everyone, welcome back to the Parenting Lab. I have to tell you, I'm feeling a little bit weird this week because this is the first time in 16 years that I don't have a child going back to school. So I'm feeling a little bit of misplaced energy, like I should be busy, but I'm not. And even though I'm still a teacher and I'm getting my classroom ready for another group of preschoolers coming in, it just feels different because back to school season comes with a lot of preparation. We buy the supplies, we figure out schedules, we fill out forms and plan lunches and get our calendars organized. We try to remember all of those little things that our kids are going to need for that first day of school. But there's another kind of preparation that's happening too. And this one isn't printed on the school supply list, and it's not really even one that we're consciously aware of. We're preparing ourselves as parents emotionally for what this school year might bring. Maybe your child is starting at a new school or moving into junior high or high school. Maybe they've been assigned a teacher you've heard things about that make you or your child a little bit nervous. Maybe school was hard for them last year, and you're already wondering if this year is going to be more of the same. You might be worried about friendships or grades, confidence, whether they'll ask for help when they need it. Maybe you're wondering if the teachers and other kids at school are really going to understand them or treat them kindly. You may have education plans in place that are new or complex, and you're struggling to feel like it's enough. And because of all of these real life things, before the year has even started, you can already feel yourself bracing for it. Now, if that's you, it makes sense that you're worried. Worry tends to show up around the things that matter most to us. So when it comes to our children, of course, we want them to be safe. We want them to feel smart and capable and included. We want good people around them, good teachers and friends who will love them. We want to know that they're okay. That concern isn't wrong. It's evidence that you care. But sometimes our minds start to live the school year before our kids have even started it. We hear one thing about a teacher and we imagine months of conflict. We remember how overwhelmed our child was last year and we assume this year is going to go the same way. We think about the jump to a bigger school or a harder class or a more complicated social world, and suddenly we're trying to solve problems that haven't even happened yet. The school year starts inside of us first. And we don't need to judge ourselves for worrying because that awareness of what might happen actually gives us a choice. We can ask ourselves, am I preparing for this year or am I bracing for it? Now, preparing says there might be hard things and I have the capacity to respond to them when they come. But bracing says something is going to go wrong and I need to stay ahead of it. Now, those can look very similar from the outside because they both involve the same things: planning, asking questions, paying attention, but they feel very different inside us. So today, I want to talk about some of the worries parents carry into a new school year. Not to stress anyone out or talk ourselves out of every concern or pretend everything is going to be perfect, but so that we can enter this school year with a little bit more steadiness and maybe even leave room for it to teach us something. One of the reasons bracing can be so hard to recognize is that worry often feels like responsible parenting. It feels like paying attention, like staying informed, being proactive so our child doesn't have to struggle any more than necessary. We tell ourselves, if I think through every possibility now, maybe I can prevent something from going wrong later. And sometimes preparation really is helpful. If your child struggled last year, it makes sense to think about the support that they might need this year. If they have an IEP or a 504 plan, there are conversations that need to happen. If they're entering a new school, helping them get oriented, navigate the building, learn the schedule, know where they can go for help, it makes that transition easier. The goal isn't to stop being involved. It's just to notice what's driving our involvement. And we can figure that out by asking, am I acting from clarity or am I trying to quiet my anxiety? Because anxiety rarely announces itself as anxiety. Sometimes it looks like researching the teacher, checking the Facebook group, or sending one more email. Sometimes it looks like repeatedly checking in with our kids because we just need to be reassured and know that they're really okay. We may think we're gathering information, but what we're really doing is looking for certainty. And a new school year can't give us that. We can know the schedule, We can meet the teacher. We can lay out and understand all of our expectations and put support systems in place, but we still can't know exactly how our child is going to experience the year. That is when worry becomes exhausting. It gives us the impossible job of trying to predict every hard thing so that we can prevent it before it happens. But being prepared doesn't mean having a plan for every possible problem. It just means knowing how you want to approach the solution. So clarity in the approach sounds like this. If my child is struggling, I can listen before I react. If the workload becomes too much, we'll look at the support that's available. If there's a problem with a teacher, I will gather as much information as I can before deciding what it means. All right? That kind of preparation doesn't require you to stay on high alert all the time. It lets you say, I don't know exactly what this year will bring, but I trust myself to pay attention. I can ask questions. I can advocate when I need to. We can make adjustments along the way. So when you notice yourself worrying, try asking, is there something useful for me to do right now? If there is, then do it. Send the email, share the information, review the support plan, help your child prepare for the transition. But if there isn't, maybe your work is just to let the year unfold a little bit before deciding how it's going to be. That isn't passive parenting. It's staying involved without the requirement of seeing the future. When you start the year already worried, small things can start to feel like signs of something bigger. So your child comes home and says they don't like their teacher, and your mind immediately goes to everything you heard before school started. Or they struggle with their first assignment, and you start to wonder if they're already falling behind. Maybe they eat lunch alone one day or forget to turn something in, and suddenly you're thinking, see, I knew this was going to be a problem. This is something our brains naturally do. Once we're concerned about something, we start looking for evidence that our concern is justified. So when we're already bracing, we can assign one interaction or one situation more meaning than it actually has. A hard day becomes a hard year. One frustrating interaction becomes a bad teacher. One missing assignment becomes proof that our child can't keep up. Those things may need our attention. Sometimes they even need our attention right away. I'm not suggesting that we dismiss what our children tell us or assume that every problem is just going to work itself out. We don't need toxic positivity to overshadow real challenges. But there's a difference between noticing a moment and turning that moment into a prediction. Maybe your child was tired. Maybe they're still trying to figure out the new system. Maybe something felt awkward or they didn't understand the assignment. A hard day is information, and information keeps us curious. A prediction, though, makes us feel like we already know where this is going. So when something happens that touches one of your fears, I want you to pause before deciding what it really means. Ask yourself, what actually happened here? What am I assuming this means? Do I need to respond right now, or do I need to gather a little bit more information? So if your child says, my teacher hates me, instead of immediately agreeing or dismissing it or composing an email in your head, start by saying, tell me what happened today that made it feel that way. That question gives your child room to tell you about their experience without either of you having to decide the whole story yet. And I think that's one of the most healing things we can offer to our kids, that experience of bringing us something that was hard or hurtful and discovering that we have the space that we can handle hearing it. We don't have to minimize it, but we also don't have to magnify it. We can just see it as it is and meet them in it. Then, if a pattern does start to emerge, we can respond from a clearer place because we're responding to what's actually happening, not only to what we're afraid might happen. Now, there are worries we carry into a new school year that aren't about what's coming. Sometimes it's connected to what we've already lived through. Maybe school was hard for you. Maybe you struggled academically or felt left out, had a teacher who embarrassed you, spent those years believing you weren't smart enough or good enough. Maybe your child had a difficult experience last year and you watched it change their confidence. You don't want to see that happen again. Or maybe you've already had an experience with this particular teacher or this principal, this school, this group of kids, and it feels impossible not to let that information shape your expectations. Our experiences matter. The things we know about our children matter. But again, those experiences are information, not a script. Your child may not experience this teacher the way someone else's child did, or even the way their older sibling did. They may handle this transition much differently than you expect. A subject that was hard last year might actually start to click this year. The friend they've been hoping for might be the new kid in their class. Your child's experience of school is allowed to be different from yours, or your partner's, or your other kids. And that can be difficult to hear and believe when something happening in their life touches something unresolved in us. Because if you felt overlooked in school, you may be especially watchful for signs that your child isn't being seen or noticed. If achievement was closely tied to approval in your family growing up, lower grades might bring up more fear than the grade itself. If you struggled socially, then your child eating alone might feel really unbearable, even if they're not experiencing it the same way that you would have. It's not that you're making everything about you. It just means that your map, your internal mind map of school, is the only one you have to navigate by. We all understand what's happening now through the lens of what has happened to us before. But when we recognize that lens, we can create a little bit of space between our child's experience and our own experience. We can ask, is this something my child is worried about? Or something that I'm worried about? Am I responding to what they need or to what I needed when I was their age? Have they decided that this is a problem, or have I already decided that for them? These questions aren't meant to talk you out of your instincts. Sometimes you will notice something before your child has words for it or wants to tell you about it. Sometimes your concern will point towards something that really does need immediate attention. But checking in with yourself first helps you approach your child with curiosity instead of handing them a conclusion. It also lets them form their own relationships with the people and the places in their lives. So if you've heard that a teacher is strict, your child doesn't necessarily need to walk into the classroom expecting that teacher to be awful. If you're nervous about junior high, they don't need a list of everything that could go wrong. You can still be honest without writing their story for them. You might say, I've heard a few things about this teacher, but I want you to have your own experience. So if things start to feel hard, just come and talk to me. That gives your child something much more useful than a warning. It gives them permission to notice what they notice and feel what they feel and come back to you without needing their experience to match your expectations. The next question then is, how do we support our children without handing them our worry? Because kids don't just hear the questions we ask, they notice how we ask them. They notice when we're studying their face for clues. They notice when a simple answer doesn't satisfy us. They notice when "how was school" becomes "are you sure? Did anything happen? Was that teacher okay? Did you have someone to sit with? Are kids being nice to you? Is the teacher doing a good job teaching you?" We're trying to show interest, and we are interested, but underneath all of those questions, our kids start to hear, "I'm worried that something is wrong." Then, instead of telling us about their experience, they might start to respond to our anxiety. So they reassure us. They leave things out because they don't want us to worry, or they start watching for the same problems that we're watching for. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We find what we're looking for. This isn't something to feel bad about or guilty about. Most of us have asked one question too many because we wanted so badly to know that our kids were okay. We don't need to be afraid to ask things. We just need to notice the energy that we're bringing into the conversation. So before you ask about the thing you're worried about, just pause for a second and consider, am I open to hearing what my child experienced, or do I need them to make me feel better right now? Because sometimes we really do want them to say, everything was great. I love my teacher. I found someone to sit with. I'm super good at math now. You have nothing to worry about. But our kids can't always give us that certainty. And honestly, they shouldn't have to. They need room to say, it was awkward, or I don't know if I like it yet, or, oh, that class is really hard. Supporting them means we can hear that without jumping in to fix it or investigate it or convince them to feel something differently or get involved. We can say, all of that makes sense. It's all still really new. Or I can see why that bothered you. Or even, do you want help thinking about it? Or do you want me just to listen to you right now? Those types of responses say, you don't have to protect me from your experience. I can handle hearing the hard parts. Now, that doesn't mean we never take action. Sometimes the right response is going to be to contact the teacher or ask about additional support options or step in when something isn't okay. But we don't have to make that decision in the first 30 seconds of the conversation. We can listen first. We can let our child finish the story. We can ask what they think they need, and we can give ourselves time to respond instead of react from that first rush of fear. Confidence in this case doesn't have to sound like everything's going to be fine. We don't know that everything will be fine. There might be a class or a friendship or a teacher that really is difficult. Confidence actually sounds like, you know what? Whatever happens, we'll figure out what to do next. That's a different kind of promise. We aren't promising our children a year without struggle. We're reminding them and ourselves that struggle is something we can respond to and integrate and navigate. And maybe that's what our kids need most as the school year begins. Not a parent who has predicted every possible challenge and is ready to pounce on every obstacle. Not a parent who never worries, just one that can make room for uncertainty and still show up in a steady way. So maybe preparing for the school year isn't just about supplies and schedules and routines, although all of those things are fun and important. Maybe part of that preparation needs to be about creating a little bit of space inside of ourselves. That space between what we know and what we fear. Space between our child's experience and our own experience. Space to listen before we react. Space for things to go right and for things to go well. Because we can spend so much time imagining what could go wrong that we forget to leave room for what we haven't considered. Maybe the teacher that you're worried about will see something really important in your child or challenge them to rise to their potential in new ways. Maybe this transition to a new school or a new situation will reveal strengths in your kids they haven't needed before. Maybe the subject that felt impossible last year will finally start to make sense. Maybe they'll find the friends that they've been waiting for. And yes, there will be hard moments too. The reality is, after we've done everything we can to prepare, we're still left with uncertainty. We can't guarantee that the year will go smoothly or protect our kids from every hard experience. What we can do is trust our ability to respond. And I don't mean trusting that nothing bad is going to happen. I mean trusting that if something does happen, we're going to be able to meet it, that we can listen and gather information, ask for help, and decide what exactly to do next. And that feels so much steadier to begin, right? So as you prepare for the school year ahead, whether you've already started or you're still counting down the days of summer, whether you send your kids to school or you homeschool, or even if you have kids in college, I want to leave you with a few questions you can ask to really anchor yourself. First, what am I most worried about right now? Second, what do I actually know? And third, is there something useful I can do today? And if there isn't, can I give this year a chance to unfold a little bit before I decide what it's going to be? You don't need to know in August how the whole year is going to go. You don't have to anticipate every hard thing to be ready to support your child. You can be attentive without being on high alert. You can listen without immediately fixing. You can advocate when advocacy is needed. And you can trust that you don't have to know everything now in order to respond well later. So let this year be what it's going to be. Let it be different than last year. Let it be different from your own school experience. Let your child discover it one day at a time and give yourself permission to do the same. And if you notice yourself bracing, come back to today, to this moment. Come back to what you know. Come back to the child that's in front of you instead of the future that your fear is imagining. And whatever this year brings, you and your child can figure out the next step together. I appreciate you spending time with me today. If you know another parent who is carrying some worry or apprehension into the new school year, please send this episode to them. Sometimes we just need the reminder that we don't have to have the whole year figured out before it even begins. And if this episode helped you notice something happening underneath your own back to school preparation, I would love to hear from you. So head to the comments and tell me what you're choosing to make space for this year. Have an amazing week. I will see you here again next time, where we'll continue to explore the art and science of parenting and put your parenting to the test. Take care.